Nebula nominee Kameron Hurley, one of the lucky writers to land on her feet following the implosion of Nightshade Books in 2013, returns with an electrifying and career-defining fourth novel in The Mirror Empire, and that is the book I'm reviewing on this episode of SFF180. I appreciate all of you joining me. Thank you very much. Now, The Mirror Empire is, on the one hand, very much cut from the currently fashionable cloth of the grim dark tapestry. It spins a tale of war, political upheaval, slave rebellion, genocide, and ethnic cleansing. But there, the similarities end. Hurley forcefully flips every single genre trope in her path in order to create a work that is simply exploding with a kind of anarchic creative ferocity. This is not your granddad's epic fantasy. The world in which the story is set, Raissa, is orbited by 3 celestial bodies, from which trained magic users draw their magical power. But the ascendance of a dominant dark star named Oma signals a time of cataclysm, when the thin skein between alternate universes can be breached and invading armies flood through to cause rack and ruin. As Oma is ascending once again, Raissa faces an invasion like never seen before, an invasion by their own alternate universe counterparts. But no one from this alternate universe can actually enter Raissa while their counterpart still lives. So a team of assassins has been sent over to take out key figures in order to smooth the way for the invasion to proceed. Now, we follow no fewer than 5 viewpoint characters whose lives are caught up in the tumultuous events. One of these is a young girl named Lilia. She actually came from the alternate universe over to Raissa, the same alternate universe whose invading armies are now swooping in to take over. Lilia has been given a secret gift by her mother that she does not yet know about. She has a power that's untapped, she's unaware, but it may be that the fate of Raissa hinges upon this power. The next character, Akio, is the younger brother of the leader of the Dai peoples. And when she dies under mysterious circumstances, he inherits her seat, even though he isn't qualified for it. For one thing, he's male, and for another thing, he really just wants nothing more out of life than simple domesticity and the family life, to be very peaceful. Anyway, he now must face not only the incoming storm, this war that is on their doorsteps, but treachery and betrayal and deceit from the many clans in his own court who really don't trust him with this new power that he is wielding. Rohin May is a young boy. He is a magic user in training, a paragista, they're called. He wants a life of adventure, but he gets a little bit more than he bargained for when Akio entrusts him with some clandestine tasks. Reality is going to bite this kid very, very hard, and it remains to be seen whether or not his own untapped powers are going to be up to the task of keeping him alive and in one piece. We now come to 2 of the most compelling characters. Taigan is a gender-fluid assassin from the Saijuan continent to the north. Now, by gender-fluid, I mean her body actually undergoes this cyclical physical change in sex. Now, the Saijuan people have been the first to feel the initial might of these invading forces. They have their own history of brutally oppressing the Dai peoples, but now the Saijuan need the Dai's help. They need the help of Dai scholars in order to translate some ancient manuscripts that may contain the key to thwarting these armies. And finally, Zazili is a mixed-race general from the matriarchal and extremely brutal Dorina Empire. Finding herself tasked with a mission that essentially consists of exterminating her nation's entire population of Dai slaves, both events in her personal as well as her military and professional life will cause Zazili to question her loyalties and, frankly, her very grasp on reality itself. All of this would be enough to root any epic fantasy series on a rock-solid conceptual foundation, but Kameron Hurley's world-building goes a step further. In addition to such high coolness quotient treats as semi-sentient carnivorous trees that wander the landscape, or warriors who ride into battle on the back of bears, Hurley pays specific attention to the people and the cultures of her world, not just such things as history and lore. So for example, with the Dai people, you have a group of folks who, perhaps in reaction to being on the receiving end for several centuries of oppression and slavery, have formed very large polyamorous family units with multiple spouses of both genders, many children. I don't think anybody among the Dai people isn't bisexual. And while The Mirror Empire is a full-on work of feminist epic fantasy, Kameron Hurley does not flinch in the least from portraying her female Dorina warriors as being any less thuggish and brutal and sexually violent as anybody who might have ridden with Attila the Hun. Indeed, if anything about this novel is going to prompt discussion, it's going to be its gender politics, which are unapologetically provocative and expressly designed to force a rethinking of the roles fantasy readers have perhaps unthinkingly accepted all down the years of seeing decades of Boris Vallejo and Frank Frazetta covers in which, the busty slave girl or the princess is clinging to the quadriceps of the, manly, beefy, sword-wielding hero. For instance, Zazili, on the surface, is just a gender-swapped version of this kind of traditional sword and sorcery musclehead. But in Hurley's careful handling, she is allowed a level of human dimension that obliges us to think a little bit more deeply about our own ingrained gender biases as readers. Now, Zazili has a trophy husband, a mincing, almost absurdly feminized weakling named Anavha, and she displays towards him a domineering physical possessiveness that, in her way of thinking, equates to love. Anava, for his part, really clings to Zazili, but really it's only out of the kind of bond that a psychologically pummeled abuse victim has towards their abuser. Now, intriguingly, Hurley's portrayal of both Zazili and Anava show a greater level of understanding and compassion than the two characters have for one another. And like some of the less morally sound characters in George R.R. Martin's A Song of Ice and Fire, guys like Jaime Lannister or Tyrion, it's the repellent personality traits that Zazili has that really do make her seem more human and give her character most of its appeal. She, like her husband, is a product of her culture, so naturally she is going to behave according to her privilege. But, if any of the rough trade that Anava is occasionally subjected to kind of makes you wince a little bit, well, guess what? That's kind of the point. Now, I suspect it is a little bit too easy to focus on just one facet of what really is a rich and multifaceted story, but that is actually a testament to how successful Kameron Hurley has been at realizing her ambitions. There is so much to talk about in The Mirror Empire, whether you stick to the complexities and the layers of its unfolding plot, or if you want to delve into its ideas about family and sexuality and human intimacy. It's Hurley's staunch insistence on following her own drumbeat that really has resulted in what I think is an intensely rewarding reading experience. But, a caveat, this is not a book for everyone. Now, I suppose that I could maybe touch upon, some of its flaws. For example, a tendency towards overlength, maybe some excessive detail, a little bit too much information unfolding in the plot all at once, few dry stretches, breaks up the pace here and there, some nomenclature is confusing, blah, blah, blah. You could go on and on with it. But still, I would say that, again, unless you are someone who is just put off by the overall grim darkness of grimdark to begin with, and I know a lot of readers are, a lot of readers just don't like that kind of fantasy, then I would have to say that the overwhelming creative virtues of The Mirror Empire far outweigh its vices. This is, in the end, the kind of book that makes its writer's name, and Kameron Hurley is now a major epic fantasy talent. And that is all I've got time for on this episode of SFF180. I want to thank all of you once again for joining me. Please remember, the most important thing, these are reviews. You're not always going to agree with me, but if you enjoyed watching, please leave a like, share this video far and wide with your SFF reading friends on social media, and above all, please subscribe. That is what helps this channel to grow. And until I see all of you next time, happy reading.